In this video, I'll be installing the RoboShop application on an OpenShift cluster. The purpose is to demonstrate how Turbonomic uses the utilization data of these applications to recommend actions to improve performance. First, I'll go ahead and clone this GitHub repository. When that's done, we will go into the K8s folder in the repository, which has the Helm charts and all the deployment YAMLs of the services we are going to install. Before we run the install command, I'll switch back to my OpenShift cluster. I have an instance of Turbonomic running in a project named Turbonomic. Go to the route section and click on the URL. This will take you to the UI for Turbonomic. The Action Center is where you will see all the recommendations from Turbonomic. If you click on Settings and go to Policies, after installation, Turbonomic comes with a set of default policies. So we'll go ahead and click on the defaults, go to Container Spec Defaults, and scroll down to the bottom. Here we will change a couple of properties. One is the minimum observation period. The default is 1. We'll switch to none. This basically means that Turbo will start recommending actions immediately instead of waiting 1 day. The second one is aggressiveness. We will change this to 99.9 percentile. This just means that Turbonomic, when it recommends actions, it will keep more performance in mind. So this is better for, or it's ideal for maybe production environments with more critical workload. And in a test and dev environment, you can target more efficiency. We'll go ahead and click Save Policy. And then we'll switch back to my terminal. Before we run the install command, we'll go ahead and create a new project. We'll name it Robot Shop Test. Make sure you have selected that project you just created. And then we'll run a couple of OC admin commands. One is to give privileged access to the default service account. And the second one is to give a username default the ability to run any UID security context constraint. Once that's done, we will run OCGet SC, which is to find the storage class name available in the cluster. And then we'll use that in our Helm install command. Here we'll be passing two parameters. One is OpenShift is equals true, and the second one is the storage class name, which is managed NFS storage, which we found out by running OCGet SC command. We'll go ahead and trigger the installation. You should get a deployed message after this, and we'll go ahead and see if the pods are running. Okay, as you can see, all the pods are ready and in running state. We're going to apply one more deployment YAML file from the repository, which is the load deployment.yaml. What it does is it generates traffic to our application. So do OC apply -file load deployment.yaml. And this should create a new pod with load in it. Okay, that's up and running as well. Now we'll also go ahead and create a route, which is basically an external URL for our application. So we'll run the OC create route command. And we'll specify the service name that we're going to use, which is web. So once the route is created, run OCGet route to get the URL. Copy that into a browser, and that should take you to the home page of our application. Now switching back to our OpenShift cluster, you'll see that there is the RoboShop test uh, namespace or project that I created, which has all the pods running. I also have another um, um, namespace or project named RoboShop, which I deployed earlier, running through the exact same steps. And it's basically has the same pods running and the route as well. So switching back, why I did this is because it usually takes the data analysis and action display might take 10 minutes. So instead of waiting, I wanted to show the actions in live in the RoboShop project. The one that we created live is RoboShop test. So switching back to the Turbonomic UI, if I go to the Action Center, I should be seeing actions for my namespace RoboShop here. So if I click on this namespace and then in the pending actions chart, if I expand show all, this will scope only the actions in this specific namespace. Now we'll go ahead and click on more details on one of these actions. We'll take the first one, which is MySQL. Here, Turbonomic is saying that the memory request and limit is underutilized, and there's also CPU throttling. So it will provide a couple of charts explaining the data, and if you scroll down to the bottom, it will provide the recommendation. Here, it's asking us to increase the virtual CPU limit and also reduce the virtual memory limit and the request. Before we execute this action, I'm going to go back to my OpenShift cluster, to the RoboShop namespace, and click on Expand Workloads and click on Deployment. We'll go ahead and select MySQL, click on YAML, and if you scroll down, you will see this Resources section. We're going to verify that what you see in Turbonomic matches with what you have in your deployment YAML. So here you can see the limit of the CPU is set to 200 and request is 100. So if you come back to Turbonomic, you can see here CPU limit is 200 and it's asking us to increase it to 500 because of CPU throttling. Now the virtual memory limit is 1 gig and request is 700, and it's asking us to reduce both. We'll go back into the deployment YAML and look at the limit, which is 1 gig, and memory 700, which matches what we're seeing in Turbonomic. And what it's recommending us to do is reduce both of this and increase the CPU. So we'll go ahead and execute this action. And we should get a tick mark once it's done. So now you can see that this is grayed out because we already executed this action. We'll close it. We'll come back into our deployment YAML in RoboShop and click on MySQL, click on YAML, and you should see the changes that we did should be reflected in our deployment YAML. So you can see CPU got increased to 500 and memory got reduced. Both the memory request and limit got reduced to the recommended Turbo recommended values. Now we'll go back to the Action Center. We'll scope it again to the RoboShop namespace, and let's go ahead and look at another container. This time we'll click on shipping, expand the details. Here Turbonomic is saying that memory limit congestion and also CPU throttling congestion. So if you scroll down to the bottom again, it will show you the recommended values. It's asking us to increase the CPU limit from 200 to 500 and increase the virtual memory limit from 1 gig or 0.98 gigs to 1.48. So we'll go back into our RoboShop deployments, click on shipping and YAML to make sure what we see, the values that we see in Turbonomic matches with the deployment YAML. In the resource section, the CPU limit is 200, which is what we're seeing here. And it's asking us to increase to 500. And then the memory from 0.98. So it should be 1 gig. Yep, memory limit is 1 gig, and it's asking us to increase that to 1.48. So we'll go ahead and execute this action. And once we get the tick mark, we'll go back into the YAML again, and you see that the CPU limit and memory has been increased in our OpenShift cluster. So this demonstrates how you can take actions in Turbonomic, and it will reflect in your OpenShift or Kubernetes cluster.